Hello and welcome to Hillsborough, where Sheffield Wednesday have just lost 1-0 to Hull City. I'm Elliott Jackson, football wire writer for Reach PLC, and we're going to talk you through some of the major talking points from Hillsborough today. Sheffield Wednesday have dropped down to 7th after a third straight league defeat, obviously losing to Stoke City on Boxing Day, Cardiff City on Sunday, and then again at Hillsborough today. Back-to-back home defeats for the first time under Gary Monk's tenure for Sheffield Wednesday. It was Jarrod Bowen's goal that proved the difference in the second half from what was a very flat, lacklustre, just a poor all-round showing from Sheffield Wednesday, which is what we've seen from them over the Christmas period, which is so disappointing after a run of 6 games without defeat. Prior to that, down to 7th, as I say, in the Championship table today. Millwall into 6th, so they have dropped out of the Championship playoff places for the first time in probably a couple of months, to be fair. They've been up and around their highest third, of course, after the Nottingham Forest defeat. In terms of team news today at Hillsborough, it was 2 changes for Wednesday. Ati Newhugh coming in for Jacob Murphy. Change of formation as well. Instead of the 4-2-3-1 they operated in against Cardiff City, Gary Monk went back to 4-4-2, which of course has been the system he has favoured this season. Adam Reach played in the number 10 role behind Sam Winnall on Sunday, and he was back on the right-hand side. Another quiet display from Adam Reach. Really hasn't been at his best this season. Kadeem Harris on the left. And then one other change, Liam Palmer, of course, injured after that reckless challenge from Junior Hoylett. I think it's fair to say Gary Monk wasn't pleased that only got a yellow card. He's having a scan, so we don't know if he'll be involved against Brighton yet, but certainly wasn't involved today. So Julian Borner came in, Dominic Iorfa shifted to right back, which of course is where he predominantly played his football last season before his run at centre half with Tom Lee. So it was Lees and Borner at the back, Dawson in goal still, Iorfa, Lees, Borner, Fox, and then Hutchinson and Bannon, which is a big talking point in the midfield. Massimo Longo once again absent with concussion, Harris and Reach on the wings, and then Winnall and Newhugh up front. The big talking point, of course, was Stephen Fletcher's return to the bench. He's missed Wednesday's last 3 matches, which they've lost all 3, ironically. He's missed last 3 with illness. He was back on the bench. He came on at half-time. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But in terms of the first half performance, first 25-30 minutes, Hull City were dominant. They could have had the lead. Matthew Pennington somehow missing. The ball came in from a corner, flicked on by a Hull City head, and Pennington at the back post, it just sort of threw his body at it. He couldn't really get a foot or a clean connection. He sort of just bodied it wide, if you say. He didn't really get like I say, it wasn't really a foot. He sort of hit through his chest at it, just wide the post. Real let off for Wednesday, and I thought they were really poor in general. They really missed Massimo Luongo today. His energy when Wednesday play 4-4-2, they really lack sometimes the dynamism that Kieran Lee or Massimo Luongo can bring. Obviously, again, it was Hutchinson and Bannon, and it wasn't one of Hutchinson's best days. I'm a big Sam Hutchinson fan, as people will know, but certainly wasn't his day today. Bannon again quiet after such a strong run of form. It's been really disappointing for Bannon over this last week. He's had 3 of probably his quietest games this season. And it's just not been his day. So as I say, really poor. I really thought that at half-time we might have seen Kieran Lee. He's not really been in Gary Monk's first choice 11 in the last few weeks. He hasn't started since Blackburn away, I think, which was a fair while ago. Maybe more recently than that, if memory serves me correctly. But without Massimo Luongo, his dynamism, it was just very rigid. There was no angles, no one coming short. Again, no Fernando Forestieri, which is another big miss. And they just resorted to playing long balls forward to Ati Newhugh. And that also affected Sam Winnall. I thought Sam Winnall played pretty well against Cardiff City. I thought he dropped into the pockets really well to link the play. None of that today. And maybe it's because when Ati Newhugh is on the pitch, there is a tendency for Sheffield Wednesday to just go long to the big Kosovan. But Winnall ineffective as a result. So in terms of first half chances for Sheffield Wednesday, there was only one standout moment, and that was Newhugh who created it. He wriggled away down the right-hand side, facing towards the Kop, pulled it back into the penalty area. Kadeem Harris's shot cleared off the line, we thought, by Pennington, but it was actually a fantastic save by George Long. Goal-bound strike from Kadeem Harris inside the area, probably about, just looking at the penalty area now, probably about 12, 15, probably about 15 yards out, on the right edge of the box, and cleared away. And that was Wednesday's best chance. That was the closest they came. And Hull City were the best team, certainly for the first half an hour of the contest. And had it not been, although they dominated possession, and that Cameron Dawson didn't really have a save to make. One save he made from George Honeyman, but he was offside. It was still a good save. Obviously, Dawson didn't know he was offside at the time. But again, if it goes in, keeper, you probably would say it's an error, but a good save nonetheless. Half-time comes, Gary Monk clearly not happy. I imagine they got a bit of a rollicking at half-time. We know Gary Monk is not afraid to do that at the break. Stephen Fletcher, half-time substitute, he came on for Atty Newhugh. Of course, like I say, he's missed the last 3 games, top goal scorer for Sheffield Wednesday. And they've missed him so much. He just adds a focal point, as well as the goal threat, which is something Wednesday obviously are desperate to address in January. Gary Monk spoke in the press conference we've just had. It's obvious that the areas that Wednesday are going to target this January are going to be at the top end of the pitch. A striker, maybe another winger. Those are the sort of areas he really needs to target. But as I say, Stephen Fletcher came on and he didn't really have a lot of the ball. Like I say, Wednesday were very passive in midfield. They weren't really pressing Hull. They weren't very proactive in possession, and it was very much lacked ideas. They lacked creativity, which, as we know, Barry Bannon is usually the one to bring the energy and the drive in midfield. But when he's off it, it's a little bit like Sheffield Wednesday are off it, and that was the case again today. Kadeem Harris didn't have his best game against Cardiff City, I think that's fair to say. And once again today, not at his best, wasteful. An opportunity, particularly in the second half, cut inside on the full-back, got his shot, and Barry Bannon screaming it for it on the edge of the area, men in the area to cross the ball, fires a shot high, wide, well over the bar. Wasteful is the word I would use to describe Kadeem Harris at the moment. It's just not falling for him. I think I'm right in saying he has started every single one of Sheffield Wednesday's championship games this season, so maybe it's a case that they could do with taking him out of the firing line, maybe having a couple of games on the bench just to re-energise. But when you look at the other options to play there, Forestieri of course injured, Adam Reach quiet again, nothing from him today. He's really struggling. He looks shot of confidence. Jacob Murphy came on, he gets into some good areas, Jacob Murphy, and he's got a lot of endeavour, he works hard, but that final ball, it's so difficult to see at the moment why Newcastle United paid the best part of £10 million for him from Norwich City. Obviously he was producing that final ball then. He's got a lot of good raw attributes, but he's just not finding that bit of quality in a Sheffield Wednesday shirt. And shortly after the chance for Kadeem Harris, as I say, blazed over the bar, Jarrod Bowen scores and opens the scoring. And Hull had been quiet in the second half. As I say, Hull had dominated, or certainly, dominate is probably too strong a word. They'd shaded the first half. They'd been the stronger team. They'd kept the ball. They looked more fluid. They looked more likely to score, mainly, although Sheffield Wednesday probably had the better chances. But they were quiet at the start of the second half. Wednesday sort of took the game a little bit more to them. But Bowen scored, good ball in from George Honeyman from the left. Bowen evaded his marker, and that's goal number 17 of the season for him. It's really tough to see if Hull City will be able to keep hold of him beyond January. He's really doing well for them at the moment. Excuse me. At the back, I thought... At the back, I thought Lees and Borna were a little bit shaky today. They didn't really fill me with a lot of confidence. Tom Lee's on the ball. He looks really nervous whenever he's in possession, and again that leads to him, rather than trying to play a pass into midfield to get Wednesday going, more inclined to play it long to Atty Newhugh if he can. Julian Borna again, a couple of errors, one in the first half where he tried to bring the ball down, gave it away, Hull City broke, got booked relatively early on. Them two didn't inspire him with confidence. Again, for me, the pick of the bunch was Dominic Iorfa. He was the best performer, again out of position today, playing at right back rather than at centre half, which is where he's impressed so much. Bearing in mind he was up against one of the league's trickier customers in Kamil Grzycki. He kept him quiet. Grzycki substituted after about 70 minutes, 75 minutes, and he didn't really have a kick. Iorfa's really playing well at the moment, and if Liam Palmer isn't back for a while, we could see Iorfa continue at right back, or does he bring Moses Odebaggio, of course, to right back and put Iorfa back in at centre back? But for me, on current performances, I would say Dominic Iorfa is probably Sheffield Wednesday's number one centre back. Really, Borna, he looked like a man who hadn't started in 6 games, of course, which is when his last start came. Obviously, been out of the team since coming back. Just before Charlton was his last appearance, and it's just not happened for Julian Borna of recent, and he looked a bit ring rusty. So you're then expecting Hull City have got the lead. You're expecting Sheffield Wednesday, the home team. They've only lost, bearing in mind, 2 home games this season. first defeat since August against Cardiff. Of course, lose to QPR in August. That was the first home defeat, and you were expecting a barrage, a real surge of attacking play from Wednesday. Bearing in mind, obviously only a few days ago they chucked the kitchen sink at Cardiff, but just couldn't get the equaliser. None of that today. It was just really lacklustre. It was laboured. Laboured is the word I would use to describe the performance. And they've rightly dropped down to 7th in the table as a result. They didn't really deserve anything today. Maybe you could argue on the balance of chances they could have had a point, but Hull City, for me, they looked the better footballing team. And Gary Monk clearly unhappy. We've just had the press conference and he's said unacceptable, not happy. And he's questioned the character of some of his players. He's very much said it's the first time that he's seen them in this scenario, in this position with their backs up against the wall, and it's time to see what they can do in this situation. We know what they're capable of. The 4-0 win at Nottingham Forest, 6 games unbeaten. They are capable of great things, but this is a testing spell for them. Of course, they've got Brighton in the FA Cup on Saturday, which won't be an easy game. Gary Monk may make changes for that. In terms of team news, Liam Palmer, they're still awaiting a scan, as I may have mentioned earlier, to determine whether he'll be back or not. Wasn't ruled out, but probably a bit unlikely. Leeds United away the week after in the Championship is probably a more likely or more realistic comeback date for Liam Palmer. No update on Kieran Westwood. I asked him about Fernando Forestieri if he could be involved at the Amex on Saturday, and he said no. Quite flatly no. I then, for obvious follow-up question, when are you hoping he'll be back? And he seemed very non-committal. He just sort of said he hopes he's back in training the week after, but it seems like Forestieri's a fair way away from a return, which is another concern, because when Wednesday are lacking dynamism and someone who can create chances in between the lines, he's the go-to man really in this current squad, but he doesn't look any closer to a return. Massimo Alonga will be back though on Saturday. He's been training the last couple of days, Gary Monk said, but obviously with concussion you've got the certain guidelines and regulations, so he wasn't involved today. But another disappointing display for Sheffield Wednesday. Like I say, dropped to 7th in the table now, 3 straight defeats. No immediate transfers on the horizon. On Jordan Thornley, actually, obviously that was announced early on Wednesday, which of course it is today. On that decision to let Thornley go on a permanent, certainly came as a bit of a surprise to most of the fan base, in particular myself. I thought it was going to be a loan deal. I wasn't expecting him to leave the club permanently, but they had an honest chat. There was interest from Blackpool, and Gary Monk thought it was the best decision for both parties. Jordan Thornley's now at an age where he needs to be playing week in, week out football, and they thought it was best for his career. It's a position Wednesday are well stocked when you think they've got Lees, Iorfa, Hutchinson can play there, Borner, of course, David Bates, although we've not seen David Bates for some time, not since the Carabao Cup days, Carabao Cup game against Everton where they were knocked out. I think that was his last appearance. Certainly played against Rotherham, that might be the only appearance, but he's not played in ages, other than for the 23. So they do have 4 or 5 options at centre-back, so you can understand the decision. No idea really on a rough fee, undisclosed figure, but he praised his character. No issues between the pair, but they just thought it was best for Thornley's development and for his footballing career if he was to move on. So on to Brighton at the weekend, and hopefully a better result for Sheffield Wednesday.